Welcome back. This is the introduction to AI networking. Today we'll be going over leveraging large language models in networking. We'll be using OpenAI and the GPT-3.5 Turbo model. So with that being said, we're going to do a different format to try to speed up this video. So I'm going to create a new directory, and then we're going to create the example file, and then we're going to get started. So now what we want to do is I want to leverage two files. So with OpenAI, we will need API key. You can open that in openai.com, go to API, and you should be able to access your own API key. Now I'm going to create an API variable so we can pull it into our example file. Next, I'm going to go to the example file and then start pulling in our imports. First thing we did was we imported OpenAI. You will have to install this model in order for it to work. You just need to do a pip install OpenAI. That should do the job. Next, we import logging. We also import a data class because we'll be working with classes. And then we pulled in my secret, which we created my secret and we put that OpenAI. And then also we're pulling the list from the typing model. All right, the next thing we're doing is we're going to configure our login basic config. So with our logging, we pretty much set our format to level name, and then we set our message, and then we set our level to the debug level. Next, we're going to import our API key and instantiate our OpenAI key so we can use it later. Next, we'll be building a default message for our chat completion engine model for the OpenAI. Now we're going to create a function for our chat completion request. So with the set chat completion, we're passing in two parameters. The first parameter will be the engine. It's set as the string. We set in the default as the GPT 3.5 Turbo. So correction. And with that, the second parameter, which is message, which is a list of dictionaries, which were stated if you look at the default message. We have a list of dictionaries. One will represent the role, and then the second, the content. And then and then from that it's going to return the output. Next, we're going to create our classes. The first class is the port. We need this for, it's a dependency for the other class, which will be the switch. So let's go ahead and get started with that. Next, we'll be creating the switch class. So to explain this a little bit more, so we created our port class, which has a name, VLAN, port type. In our switch class, we have a name, a brand. The brand will either be a Cisco, Nextel, Cumulus switch. Then we'll have another parameter for row, which we'll need it for our chat GPT. We also have an office size. We have VLANs, which is a list of integers, and then ports, which is a list of ports. Now, the next thing we want to do is we want to create some methods. So the first method we're going to create is a method to generate our prompt. And this prompt is just telling it, once everything is created, what do we want it to do? So that's what this method is for. So let's go ahead and create it. Next, we want to create another method to specify the host name. Next, we want to configure the VLANs. So this prompt is going to specify the VLANs. So I just want to interject and pause this while before we finish this. So we're going to create three variables. The first one is we're going to set a default VLAN for each of the switches. We're also going to create all the VLANs, and then we're going to set the last VLAN, so when we do the prompt, we can have it in a well-organized manner where ChatGPT can read it. So just to go through this this method, we're going to create a configuration VLAN prompt. It's going to set a default VLAN. It's going to have a VLANs, so it's going to specify all the VLANs except the last one. We're going to set another parameter, another value to last VLAN, and then in this sentence, it's going to say it should have VLANs and has the list of all the VLANs separated by a comma. And then the very last one is going to split the last VLAN. It says and the last VLAN with the VLAN, specify the default VLAN, and then it's going to say set as the default VLAN. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set a prompt for our ports. So with that, it's going to do something similar to the VLANs, but we're going to loop through it, and then we're going to specify append it to a list, and then we're going to join it and return it. So let's go ahead and get started. So what this method did, we created an empty array, assigned it to an underscore. We're going to loop over the ports. We're going to assign the port. We're going to loop over the port list, everything except for the last position. We're going to set it for this port. This port number or port name needs to be assigned a certain port, which is either an access or a trunk port. And then we're going to assign it as VLAN. And then at the very end of that, we're going to set the very last position. And then we're going to put the AND, so we can specify that this is the last. And then we're going to do the same for the last position. Next, we're going to configure the prompt message. So we're going ahead and going to collect all these together and add it to our prompt. Sorry, before doing this, I think I missed the function. We're going to ahead and we want to create the actual function or the actual prompt to start the configuration for the switch. So in this one, this will be the switch configuration type. Awesome, we back. So now let's go ahead and finish our message prompt. So we're going to go ahead and get started with that. We're back. So what this message prompt is doing is the first thing it's going to do is going to set the configuration type. Next, it's going to set the host name. It's going to say create the VLANs. It's going to ask to create the ports with the VLANs, and then it's going to state to ask to configure it. All right. The next method is we need to do a render. So with this message prompt, we need to create another function to create the rendering so we can add this into the ChatGPT prompt. And the last thing is we want to, once the prompt displays a message, we want to save it and add it to the switch. So we're going to create one more function to set a parameter called plan. So we're going to call set plan, and then we're going to assign it to the plan parameter or plan property. Great. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to start assigning or creating our switches. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a switch 1, and and then once I create the switch 1, we're going to walk through that one. So let me create our first switch. Switch 1, walk you through this. So switch 1 will have a name as SW1. It's a Cisco brand. It's using the role of user for our ChatGPT model. The office size is small. We're using VLAN 10, 30, and 50. We're going to set ports, 3 ports. We're going to set the first port to VLAN 10, the second port to VLAN 30, and the third port to VLAN 50, and it's a trunk. All right, we're going to do the exact same thing for switch 2. So we have switch 1 and switch 2. Pretty much just copy and paste and made some changes for the actual name, the VLANs, and the ports. Now, what we want to do is we want to create a list of all the configurations so we can loop through it. Now that we're done, we want to go ahead and we want to loop through our configurations. And then we want to push the prompt to the ChatGPT. Then we want to set the plan, and then we want to log it. I'll walk through this iteration. So what we did was we're looping through all of the configurations. So switch 1 and switch 2. We're going to get a response from the ChatGPT. We're going to, whatever that response, we're going to set that as the plan in our configuration for that particular switch. And then we're going to log it. And then that should be it. So let's go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and bring up a terminal. Okay. And we want to go to leveraging. And then what we want to do is I'm going ahead and pause this, and I'm going ahead and add my secret so we can run it. So let me clear this, and I'll be right back after I update this file. Okay, I'm back. So we're gonna go ahead and run this. If there's any bugs or any issues, I'm not gonna speed through it. We're just gonna work through the bugs together so we can learn that way. All right, go ahead and run this. Sorry, I had to change directories. So I'm gonna do Python. Example. Okay, went through the first one. And we went through the second one. So we're gonna walk through this. So since we enable logging, so there was some debug logging within the API module. So it did the request to version chat completions. So that's what you see the debugging here is for. This is my particular output. So this is the desired setup for what we did. So what it did was it's telling us to do enable config, go to host, host name switch 1, which I specified. We got VLAN 10 and we're assigning it to the layer 2 VLAN. We're then configuring our interfaces, both for the access switch for port 1, port 2, and then port 3 is the trunk, and with the native VLAN being 50. All right, and then we got the same similar input. So slightly different. It has a bunch of exits, but it looks fairly the same. And that's it. So what we did here is we leveraged a large language model like OpenAI to configure and help us configure some of our switches, our new switches. Went out there and it created a configuration file to do so. So this is one of the possibilities how we can leverage API into networking. I want to say thank you guys for joining, and for my next course it will be a more advanced leveraging over to the LLM models. We're going to make a more dynamic version of this so we can add on and we can create more prompts to make it more dynamic so we can grow with the AI community, so we can stay on top of our technology, so we can move forward for the future. Until next time, thank you for joining.